I am continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a bit as I move along. Okay, we have now gotten to the reign of Hezekiah in Judah. Hoshea is still king in Israel, although we're about near the time of the destruction of Israel in the north. And Hezekiah has begun a religious reform. He has removed all idol worship. He's taken down the high places, and we got this major reform going on. That's what we read about last time in 2 Kings chapter 18. Right now we're going to turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 29. Now this is a long chapter. I'm going to try and get through it in one video, but it's a fairly long chapter. But this is about the same thing. This is Hezekiah's religious reforms. He has just become king, and we'll read about this here. So this is what we have. Hezekiah reigns in righteousness and restores worship of Jehovah. Levites cleanse and sanctify the house of the Lord. Priests offer sacrifices and make reconciliation and atonement for the people. Hezekiah and all the people worship the Lord and praise his name. Okay, now, just a brief reminder. In chapter 28 of 2 Chronicles, we read how Ahaz, he took away a lot of the treasures out of the temple and gave them to Assyria. But then it said that he closed the temple. He wouldn't let anybody go into the temple. He shut it down and said, no, we're not worshiping here anymore. And he went and he worshipped all of his idols. Now Hezekiah is coming on the scene, his son, and we're going to see Hezekiah's religious reforms. So here we go. Hezekiah began to reign when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that David his father had done. Again, a great king, the greatest king of Judah. Verse 3. He, in the first year of his reign, in the first month, opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them. And he brought in the priests and the Levites and gathered them together into the east street, and said unto them, Hear me, ye Levites, sanctify now yourselves, and sanctify the house of the Lord God of your fathers, and carry forth the filthiness out of the holy place. For our fathers have trespassed, and done that which was evil in the eyes of the Lord our God, and have forsaken him, and have turned away their faces from the habitation of the Lord, and turned their backs. Also they have shut up the doors of the porch, and put out the lamps, and have not burned incense, nor offered burnt offerings in the holy place unto the God of Israel. Wherefore the wrath of the Lord was upon Judah and Jerusalem, and he hath delivered them to trouble, to astonishment, and to hissing, as ye see with your eyes. For lo, our fathers have fallen by the sword, and our sons and our daughters and our wives are in captivity for this. Now it is in mine heart to make a covenant with the Lord God of Israel, that his fierce wrath may turn away from us. My sons, be not now negligent, for the Lord hath chosen you to stand before him to serve him, and that ye should minister unto him and burn incense. Very first thing he does is to reopen the temple and clean it out. And then he brings in the Levites and says, Look, we are suffering as a people because we have abandoned God. But it is my intention to restore true worship, to make a covenant with God and restore our nation. And he calls on the Levites, those who are properly, he doesn't try to do this himself. He calls on the Levites, who are the ones anointed by God to do this work. This is a great start. And he talks about the captivity. Remember, when the Edomites and the Philistines came in and they conquered, they took territory on the borders of Judah, and they took captives. So that's what he's talking about here. Verse 12. When the Levites arose, Mahath, the son of Amasai, and Joel, the son of Azariah, of the sons of the Kohathites, and of the sons of Merari, Kish, the son of Abdi, and Azariah, the son of Jehalelel, and of the Gershonites, Joah, the son of Zimmah, and Eden, the son of Joah, and of the sons of Elizaphan, Shimri, and Jael, and of the sons of Asaph, Zechariah and Mattaniah, and of the sons of Heman, Jehiel and Shammai, and of the sons of Jeduthun, Shemaiah and Uzziel. And they gathered their brethren and sanctified themselves, and came according to the commandment of the king by the words of the Lord to cleanse the house of the Lord. And the priests went into the inner part of the house of the Lord to cleanse it, and brought out all the uncleanness that they found in the temple of the Lord into the court of the house of the Lord. And the Levites took it to carry it out abroad into the brook Kidron. Now they began on the first day of the first month to sanctify, and on the 8th day of the month came they to the porch of the Lord. So they sanctified the house of the Lord in 8 8 days, and in the 16th day of the first month they made an end. Then they went in to Hezekiah the king, and said, We have cleansed all the house of the Lord, and the altar of burnt offering with all the vessels thereof, and the shewbread table with all the vessels thereof. Moreover, all the vessels which King Ahaz in his reign did cast away in his transgression have we prepared and sanctified, and behold, they are before the altar of the Lord. So it takes them 8 days to cleanse it all, to clean it all out, and restore the furnishings to the way it's supposed to be. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about the names listed here. Most of these people will probably never read about again. But it is interesting that, remember, the three sons of, not Aaron, but the three sons of Levi were Kohath, Merari, and Gershon. And so we have, of the Kohathites, there are 2. Of the Merarites, we have 2. Of the Gershonites, we have 2. But we also have the children or descendants of the singers of David, the choir conductors that were given their. So the 6 who are the sons of the 3 tribes of Levi, they're the priests, and then we have the singers that were appointed by David. Because remember, the priests were to serve a certain rotation during the year, and the singers had their rotation to match the priests. And so we have here, again, following as David set up, priests with their singers. I find that interesting. Anyways, verse 20. Then Hezekiah the king rose early and gathered the rulers of the city and went up to the house of the Lord. And they brought 7 bullocks and 7 rams and 7 lambs and 7 goats for a sin offering for the kingdom and for the sanctuary and for Judah. And he commanded the priests, the sons of Aaron, to offer them on the altar of the Lord. So they killed the bullocks, and the priests received the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. Likewise, when they had killed the rams, they sprinkled the blood upon the altar. They killed also the lambs, and they sprinkled the blood upon the altar. And they brought forth the he-goats for the sin offering before the king and the congregation, and they laid their hands upon them. And the priests killed them, and they made reconciliation with their blood upon the altar to make an atonement for all Israel. For the king commanded that the burnt offering and the sin offering should be made for all Israel. And he set the Levites in the house of the Lord with cymbals, with psalteries, and with harps, according to the commandment of David, and of Gad the king's seer, and Nathan the prophet, for so was the commandment of the Lord by his prophets. Hezekiah is here restoring the proper order. Not just bringing in the priests to do the sacrifice. You'll notice the sacrifices are done according to the law of Moses, in that the sin offering, they lay their hands on the sin offering. And they make that special note because the sin offering was, the priest was to lay his hands on the sin offering in order to, in essence, transfer the sins of the people onto the sacrifice. And then he sets up the singers as was ordered by David and the prophets in the time of David. So it's very important that he is doing everything he can to restore everything to the way it should be, the way God commanded it. He is making sure that it all is there. Nothing is lacking. Verse 26. And the Levites stood with the instruments of David, and the priests with the trumpets. And Hezekiah commanded to offer the burnt offering upon the altar. And when the burnt offering began, the song of the Lord began also with the trumpets, and with the instruments ordained by David, king of Israel. And all the congregation worshipped, and the singers sang, and the trumpeters sounded, and all this continued until the burnt offering was finished. And when they had made an end of offering, the king and all that were present with him bowed themselves and worshipped. Moreover, Hezekiah the king and the princes commanded the Levites to sing praise unto the Lord with the words of David and of Asaph the seer. And they sang praises with gladness, and they bowed their heads and worshipped. Then Hezekiah answered and said, Now ye have consecrated yourselves unto the Lord. Come near and bring sacrifices and thank offerings into the house of the Lord. And the congregation brought in sacrifices and thank offerings, and as many as were of a free heart burnt offerings. And the number of the burnt offerings which the congregation brought was 70 bullocks, 100 rams, and 200 lambs. All these were for a burnt offering to the Lord. And the consecrated things were 600 oxen and 3,000 sheep. But the priests were too few, so that they could not flay all the burnt offerings. Wherefore their brethren the Levites did help them till the work was ended, and until the other priests had sanctified themselves. For the Levites were more upright in heart to sanctify themselves than the priests. And also the burnt offerings were in abundance with the fat of the peace offerings and the drink offerings for every burnt offering. So the service of the house of the Lord was set in order, and Hezekiah rejoiced, and all the people, that God had prepared the people. So the thing was done suddenly. Now, when it says suddenly, it means quickly. It means that Hezekiah gave the order, they sanctified the temple, and then Hezekiah said, people were going, and everybody got together, and they came together, and they did all these sacrifices. And again, They got the singing, they got the choir singing as they're doing their sacrifices. That's always nice. But I want to point out this one thing. I like this, that the priests who had sanctified themselves to do this work, there weren't enough of them. So they couldn't kill the animals fast enough. They couldn't, as I said, they couldn't flay the sacrifices. They couldn't prepare them to be put on the altar. And so they got the regular Levites. And the Levites were better at sanctifying themselves than the priests were. And so they said, look, until we get more priests sanctified and able to do the work, we're going to bring in the Levites. This would be like, it's like in the modern day. In the temple, it's a Melchizedek priesthood ordinance to perform the work for the dead, to do the baptisms for the dead. And for most of the church's history, you have a Melchizedek priesthood holder performs the baptism, and 2 more have to witness it. But recently, it has been announced that priests of the Aaronic priesthood can now be witnesses. They still can't perform the ordinance, but they can be the witnesses, because there's just too much work to do and not enough Melchizedek priesthood holders to always have 2 Melchizedek priesthood holders to act as witness. And there's the same thing here. They just didn't have enough. And so the actual sacrifice itself was still done by the priest, but the preparing of the sacrifice, the killing of the animal, the cutting of it, and removing the fat and all that could be done by the Levites, because there just weren't enough priests. There were too many people. They brought close to 2,000 animals to be sacrificed. And we had, 6 priests? We just didn't have enough guys here. We had to bring in the Levites, and the Levites were sanctifying themselves faster than the priests were. On that point, I'm not sure. I don't know if that means that the Levites were more righteous, that they were more willing or more prepared for it, but that there were more. First, there were more of them. There's always been more Levites than priests, because the priests are just the descendants of Aaron, and the Levites are the descendants of all the family of Levi. So there were more of them, so you could get more of them sanctified more quickly. But it does seem that the priests were a little bit slow. That you had a few priests that really were gung ho for it. And a lot of Levites became gung-ho for it. And when the people started doing it, and the people started it, then the rest of the priests say, oh, it's working. Let's all get sanctified. Let's all get into this. This is a great, great story. And I'm going to leave that here. I'm going to pick this up in Isaiah for a few chapters, and then we will return to the Chronicles to read a little bit more about Isaiah and his religious reforms. But I love this beginning. This is a great beginning for Hezekiah. But we'll see you there.